How you guys doing this morning? Good? Got some coffee, some energy drinks. You guys chose to come to my talk over here. I actually went to the wrong building when I first got here, and then they tried to sign me up for classes. So they're like, welcome, new freshman. I'm like, no, I'm almost 40. But apparently TorCon is going on here too this weekend. So I walk up and there's this big old Adventure Time guy, dude. I'm like, BSides is doing it right. Yeah. And they're like, no, this is not BSides. And I'm like, that's all right. So I just want to say thank you to BSides Rochester for asking me to come out and speak. It's a little bit colder than Texas. I left yesterday, it was 84. So woke up this morning and chopped up my bed furniture for firewood and created a little fire in my hotel room. So kind of got my blood warming up again. So how many of you guys have been to DerbyCon at all? Anyone? DerbyCon? A couple people? All right. So I gave this talk at DerbyCon last year, but I was talking with the organizers, and they asked me to come out here and to kind of talk a little bit about how I do evasion and how I'm getting past a lot of defenses, and then go over some of the ways that I actually see defenses getting better. So just a little bit about me. My name is Ben 10. It's at least the alias. My real name is Mauk, but no one can pronounce it. So 10 is way easier. It just makes it avoids a lot of confusion. I am a senior security consultant with TrustedSec, even though I look like I'm a college kid or high school kid. I'm actually, I'm almost 40 years old now. So it's hard to believe. That's one of our coworkers there, and everyone called him my dad. I have to say though, when you're traveling and like getting on an airplane, as long as I find someone taller than me, which is like 99% of the people, if I go like right by them, especially like a business location, I look like I'm their kid going on, and they're like, yeah, go ahead, little guy, get on the plane, it's okay. First class all the time. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's Ben0XA hexadecimal little endian. One guy thought it was Benoxa, so I'm not sure where that came from. A little bit of background. I actually have done 13 years in defense. I spent a lot of time in healthcare and dealing with 45 different hospitals. This was along the time when breaches were just when they were switching from paper to electronic. So I got to endure all of that. It was super fun. That's when I picked up bourbon. For the last 3 years now, now 4, I've been doing offense. So I started out with a company in Biopoint, which is in Michigan, and then moved over to TrustedSec for the last 2.5 years now. I started out as a developer. I started writing, software application. I probably coded over a couple hundred different applications, a couple million lines of code. So, I've definitely done my fair share. So I know what that looks like. Speaker trainer, kind of going all around the world, doing different things, and I'm a runner. It is the only sport where height is really not a big factor. So I can run, so I run as much as I can. So one of the big things is, perception, right? Most people, when they look at me, they think I'm a kid. They think I'm college kid, whatever the case may be. And it can be a little difficult when you're trying to convince a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation that I actually know what I'm talking about. They're like, oh, we got the C team, not the B team or the A team. We got the C guy. This is the new intern. It's actually helped me out on a couple of engagements. When I break into places, they do think I'm the intern, which is great. I love it. So I broke into a place, was walking around, and whenever I see coffee, I stop and get coffee. It is free coffee, right? I'm sorry, it's out, it's for me. I'm stopping, I'm getting coffee, and it's a great time to talk to people. So I sit there and talk, I'm like, hey, how's it going? It's my first day. I just graduated from RIT, yeah. And, here I am, and everyone talks, they're like, this, especially like the ladies that have been here for the longest, they're like, aw, you're so cute. I'm like, I know. And then as I'm talking, this guy comes up, and you can tell he's an executive just by posture and the way he is. He's 7 foot 1,000, and he comes up, and he's like, new guy, huh? I'm like, yes, sir. Yes, sir, I am. Always use sir, ma'am. Yes, sir. And he's like, where are you at? I'm like, I'm trying to get in IT. I'm still trying to learn a lot of that stuff. Really don't know much about computers. And he's like, stick with me, son. I'll teach you all the ropes. Don't worry. I'm like, thank you so much. After I completely just demolished them, got into their data center, stole all of their stuff, and we're in a readout meeting. We're sitting around this big table with all the CEOs, and like everyone's upset because I got everywhere. This guy walks in the room because apparently he'd been on all of these calls about somebody completely destroying their company that day, and he walks in on the phone. He's like, "That was you?" And I'm like, "Yep." And he's like, "Son of a," and he sits down. Right? So the point that I'm trying to make is that when we're doing any type of physical penetration testing, or when we're trying to break in, whether it requires a visual contact or even a technical, having you guys have a misperception is amazing for us. I love being considered to be a kid, except when like you call the police for a local neighborhood issue and they roll up to your house in the middle of the day, and instead of them saying like, "Hey, what's the matter?" they go, "Shouldn't you be in school?" So that makes it a little bit difficult, right? But overall, it's fun. I really enjoy people underestimating me is the word I was looking for. I love being underestimated. Because what it means is that you guys have an expectation of what I can and can't do without even knowing who I am. And I love that. I love getting on an engagement, especially when you get a blue team. They're like, "Yeah, you're not going to get past us. We've patched everything. We're running Defender. We're running this. We've got this. We get." And now understand, there's a lot of technology out there that over the last year and a half, huge improvements on the defensive side. Love it to a certain extent, but we can still get around most of it. And the thing about it is, and what I'm going to show you today, is most oftentimes than not, I'm not using exploits. I'm not using exploits. I'm using your system exactly the way that you designed it. So oftentimes when I get in, I haven't exploited anything. You guys let me in. I want to talk to you guys about this guy by the name of Frank William Abagnale Jr. Probably one of the most impressive people I've known. And so there's two ways to get into cybersecurity. Is either you study really hard, you go through, you work out, you do an intern, maybe about 7 years later, you might get senior level, or you do some federal crime, do a year or two in prison, and then open your own business, right? So you have two different avenues of choice here, whatever you guys want to choose. But Frank William Abagnale Jr., and if you do any type of research on him, you know that like he was this confidence trickster, but he was best known for being this check forger, right? And writing different checks, being able to cash those without anything. He was also an imposter. Most people know from the movie and everything else like that, but he was an airline pilot. Now, I fly a lot. I really don't want some imposter flying my plane, right? I really don't. A physician, maybe that'll help you. Maybe he'll solve something that the doctors won't. Again, I don't want you operating on me. A U.S. Bureau of Prisons agent and a lawyer. The thing about Frank is that not only was he just good at manipulating people and talking with them, he's actually escaped. Like he was in the back of a police car and escaped. By the way, this is Louisville, Kentucky, and I have no idea what happens in Louisville, Kentucky. Get this picture? What was more impressive is that he actually escaped from an airplane while it was on the taxiway from federal agents. So obviously he was caught, cut a deal, worked out with the, agents, whatever, helped them out, created his own company, now works for the FBI National Academy and does all this stuff, right? So he's, doing much better than what he was. And most people know him from this movie, right? Which is really where this talk is designed off of. And I want to show you this scene. It kind of reminds me a little bit of my high school. I didn't impersonate the teacher, though. Hopefully we got volume.
Excuse me. Oh, yeah? Do you know where room 17 French is? Yeah.
You freaking killed him, dude. You selling encyclopedias? Yeah, it looks like a substitute teacher. Go, find out.
So I want to point that out. This is where the light clicks. The guy says, yeah, he looks like a substitute teacher. Well, okay, here we go. Here we go.
I don't want you to keep doing anything.
Oh, come on. Here you go. You're too slow. You're too slow.
Quiet down, people. My name is Mr. Abagnale. That's Abagnale, not Abagnale, not Abagnale,
Not Banaxa.
but Abagnale. Now, somebody please tell me where you left off in your textbooks. Excuse me, people, if I need to ask again, I'm going to write up the entire class. Take your seats.
Chapter 7.
Will you please open your textbooks to Chapter 8, and we'll get started. Excuse me, what's your name?
Brad.
Brad, why don't you get up here in front of the class here and read conversation number 5.
Les Français sont généralement Dunsler, Pace, Q, Press.
So here we have a perfect situation of somebody having a perception based off of visual cues and underestimating. Now, the fact of the matter is he was not a teacher. But how do you know? How do you know that I'm not a hacker, right? I don't have a hoodie. I don't wear a mask. I don't look anything like most of your computer-based trainings that you have at your corporations. I don't. I look just like anyone else. I look normal, and yet people underestimate it. The same is true with most traffic. So I get it. We're talking about technology, and where does actually, Frank, all of this, roll in? Well, just hold on. We're getting to it, all right? There's some other people that I want you to know about that maybe you may not have heard about. Anyone know about Karen Thomas? Karen Thomas operated a train for 3 hours when he was 16 years old. He actually rode the train, and the only reason he got caught was because he went too fast. Private Wakeman. Sarah Rosetta Wakeman was a woman who served in the Union Army during the American Civil War under the male name of Lyons Wakeman. Wakeman served with Company H, which is the 153rd New York Volunteer Infantry, and her letters written during her service remained unread for nearly a century because they were stored in the attic of her relatives. Solomon Perel, an Israeli author and motivational speaker. He was born on the 21st of April in Germany to a German Jewish family. He escaped prosecution from the Nazis by masquerading as an ethnic German. His life story is told about Europa, which is loosely based on that autobiography. So why were they successful? Why was Frank Abagnale Jr. successful? Why were all of these people successful in manipulating and tricking people? It's because they blended in. When you think about when you're technical traffic, when I'm on your network, my goal is to blend in. A lot of times you'll get pen testers and they get on your network or whatever, and they're like, yeah, we're just going to throw everything at you. We're going to, light it up. Well, that's kind of like blending in like this.
Time to feed my babies. I think they're scared of me. They've never seen this man.
Right? It doesn't work. They can obviously tell that you're a fake. They can obviously tell that you're a fake. When I do my technical traffic, my goal is to blend in. I want you to think that I'm just some normal user. I don't want you, if I'm doing a physical pen test, I'm gonna make you think that I'm an intern. If I'm doing wireless attacks, I'm not gonna sit there and put up a rogue access point that says haha pwned. This says David's iPhone. Right? That's all it says. That's what this is. I'm not going to try and make it super elite. The problem becomes when we look at defenses, they're being done incorrectly. Because defenses are being designed around disclosures instead of discovery. They are. If you think about defenses, you think about MS-17 010. You know, for the first time it came out, everyone was cool, and then March came around and everyone was not so cool, and then all of a sudden, you know, April hit and everyone's like, oh my goodness, patch all the things, right? And then you built your defense around that disclosure. All the while, I wasn't using MS17010. In fact, we didn't start using MS17010 until probably mid to late of the year, because it had a 50% chance of blue screening your system, which wasn't, I mean, we're here pen testers, we're not here to break things. It was 50% chance, but we were still getting DA. When you look at defense, a lot of times they'll focus specifically on antivirus, like that's their first go-to. And please understand that none of these things by themselves are wrong. And it's all good to have layered defense. We want this. It's just the focus of priority. Then they go to patch management. Maybe they'll have an IPS. They'll put thin clients on every box whatsoever. Had a client once that had 15 different things running at the background. It was great, but the user couldn't do any work. They're not bad. They're not all bad. It's just not, the focus of security is not being focused correctly. They're being focused on the wrong thing. Like, this was an actual TSA agent stealing Woody's gun because guns aren't allowed on planes. So I want to talk to you something a little bit differently about when it comes to how defense should be done. And it should be done in this order of detection, deflection, and deterrence. Now, detection is very plain. It's detecting that behavior. Deflecting means stop the attack, and this is where your antivirus and everything else can come in. And the deterrence is going to be policies, procedures, patch management, things that will actually put in place that will deter me. One of the things that we'll talk about it in a little bit is paths of least resistance. So I was on an engagement, and I had system administration on 5 different boxes. I'm going to town. I am just destroying this company. And we like to have an open communication while we're doing a pen test to say, hey, this is what we've got. Well, I contact the client and I'm like, hey, I have, you know, system level access. I'm just about to the point of DA, you know, giving you an update. They're like, oh, really? Yeah. I've been on this box for the last, you know, 5 hours or whatever the case may be. Oh, okay. While I'm on the phone, the VPS that I was connected to, it blinks, like it goes black and then it comes back. And I'm like, that was weird. So I'm sitting there and then I go to open up the command prompt again. All of a sudden, this program has been blocked by your system administrator. I'm like, oh no. That's not cool. And we'll get into that in a second. So then I go to PowerShell. This program has been blocked by your system administrator. I'm like, okay. So then I go to one of my other 5 boxes and none of those are blocked. So during the pen test, they blocked my access. And they're like, yeah, you shouldn't have had access to those anyways. Okay, so that's not the point of the pen test. So they blocked PowerShell, and I couldn't use PowerShell, so I wrote a program called not PowerShell. And dropped the binary on the system and continued to own the systems. Right? And so that's actually available out on my GitHub page, not PowerShell. So you can actually run that. You can run any PowerShell code that you want, and it does not. So PowerShell.exe is not PowerShell. And if you're doing application blacklisting, where you actually like block PowerShell.exe, that's not going to stop PowerShell, right? It's just not. So that was the reason I wrote not PowerShell, was because when I was doing the pen test, they were trying to shut it down. This is another piece that we found on some of the pen tests, is that some of the organizations, they are so focused on winning the pen test that they lose the value of the pen test. And now I get it. You guys, there's some organizations out there that this is based off of their budgets. You want to make sure that you're spending the company good. If I come in and rip everything up, it's going to make you look bad. But I disagree with that mentality. And if you're in a management or executive position and you punish your team because of a bad pen test, that's wrong. The pen test is meant to be a team effort where I help you find vulnerabilities so that you know how best to secure your system. The pen test is not a report card. It's not a test. It's not an exam. It is me pointing out new advances, new techniques, some of which we've not released, that we're able to bypass your controls. So let me talk to you a little bit about how I get around some of your defenses. So this is an nmap command. Seems pretty straightforward. If you don't know all of the switches, like the first time I looked at nmap and I saw all the switches, I'm like, I am never going to learn all these things. But after a while, you get used to it. Anyone know what G88 does? Like if you look at all of your nmap tutorials, nowhere does it list a G in there. Do you know why? So when you send out a port scan, oftentimes it will put the source port as the destination port. Okay, TCP doesn't work that way, right? When you connect to something, it chooses a random port from the source port to connect to the destination port. So for G88, I'm actually telling it to set the source port to 88. Does anyone know what TCP 88 is? Kerberos. Now, how many of you guys are inspecting all of your Kerberos traffics on Wireshark? Yeah, I don't think so. So this goes under the wire. SS, does anyone know what this is? Yeah, so it's what's called a half open. So what's the three-way handshake? If I say sin, you would say ac, and then I would say synac. Sin, ac, synac, right? Hey, how's it going? Doing well. Awesome, right? Three-way handshake. What SS does is, hey, how's it going? Awesome. And I close the connection. I don't send the synac. It's a half open, right? So there's not a full connection there. All I'm looking for is, can you hear me? And then I move on, right? PN, does anyone know what this is? No ping. I don't care if that, I don't need an ICMP, right? I actually had somebody tell me to ping port 80 once. I'm like, that's not the way that it works. You can't ping a port. ICMP is a different protocol. N for no DNS resolution. I don't want to hit your DNS servers. This sets support 445. SMB is a super awesome port. I only care about the open stuff. Oops. And we care, it gives the IP range. Now, when most people don't realize is when you do an nmap scan, if you do like the normal scan, it'll do the top 100. If you do or the F scan, it'll do the top 100. If you do just normal ports, it'll do the top 1,000, right? So with nmap, I only do one port at a time. That's it. Because 99% of the time, I'm going to find something on one of the top 20 ports that we always do it. Web, SMB, LDAP, DNS, all your database servers, all of those, there's a couple of other ports that we have that we use, but we have like 20 ports that we always hit for when we find it, and generally we don't have to really go beyond that. Because you have just enough misconfigured with those 20 ports that I really don't care about the other 65,000. So I do one port at a time. That's it. So I'm not getting on your network and running 1,000 ports. So I'm not tripping up any IDS. I'm not tripping up anything else. I'm doing one port at a time, and I'm blending in. Remember, we're talking about Frank and how he was successful. My goal on your network is to blend in. I don't want to come in as a bull in a china shop. I'm going to be blending in. Don't mind me. I'm just a little guy. I don't know what I'm doing. Ignore my traffic. So if we look at this, there's also another way that we can do some of this stuff. Have you guys ever heard of Responder? Anyone? Okay, do me a favor, just because I want to hear. Who has not heard of Responder? Can you raise your hand, please? I know people don't like the polls. Okay, I love this. This is amazing. You're either going to be like, that's awesome, or you're going to cry. One of the two. Depends on what you're doing. Let's make sure all my ports are closed. Okay. Let's look at my interface. ENS33. So when you do a DNS query, does anyone know the proper order of DNS queries? Now this is important. So it first goes to your localhost file. So if I'm looking for, Ben, computer name Ben, it first goes to your localhost file. If it doesn't find it, where does it go? DNS. If it doesn't find it in DNS, where does it go? Where? I didn't hear you. What was it? So it'll go out and then it'll do so if you have NBNS and LLMNR enabled, it'll actually do a NBNS LLMNR broadcast. Now, NBNS stands for NetBIOS Name Service. LLMNR stands for Link Local Multicast Name Resolution. So what it does is say, hey, does anybody know who Ben is? And normally it comes back with, no, I have no clue. Responder says, why, yes, I do know who Ben is. I'm Ben. Come talk to me. So if you're in the lab here right now, my recommendation is that you don't do this right now. Some of you are on company laptops or whatever. So if you don't run Responder on the network right now, because you might get someone's hash. Just disclaimer. Okay, I'm privately locally here, so it's not going to be a big deal. So if I type net use, can you guys see that okay, or is it a little too small? Let's make it a little bit bigger. Net use / ben10.rit. Let's do LAN share. Does this exist? Yes or no? No. Ta-da! What that is a computation hash of the three-way handshake with SMB. We can take that hash and crack it offline. So if you have a misconfigured service on your system that's constantly broadcasting out to the wrong host name, or just in general you accidentally type the wrong thing, we can capture your hash. And oftentimes this is how we get first access to your system with no credentials at all. We just start running Responder and see what comes back. So at this point, have I exploited anything? No. I'm using the system exactly the way it was designed. I haven't exploited anything. I haven't launched, the low orbit ion cannon. I haven't done anything. I haven't even opened up Metasploit. And already I have a hash that I can dip offline. If I can get a user's credential without exploiting anything, that's golden, right? So I want to show you something else here. So a guy by the name of Casey Smith, and I think that if you haven't heard of him, you will want to follow him immediately, especially if you're going to be in defense, because he makes defenders cry. Subtee, S-U-B-T-E-E. He realized that on every computer, I think from XP forward, has this nice little program called MS Build. And MS Build does exactly what it sounds like. It actually builds a C# application that you have on there, which is great. Linux has this, by the way, too, natively. It's called Xbuild. So if you're on a Linux box, Xbuild is just the Linux version of MS Build. And Xbuild will actually build a .NET binary for you, which is really, really handy. So Casey actually found out that you can import some of your C# code into the MS Build XML file. So I was like, that's neat. So I decided that I was going to take my not PowerShell, which is up here, and so you can see that I already had the core for this, and then I realized that I could invoke PowerShell directly in memory without actually touching disk which is also super awesome. So I have this neat little invoke memory NPS. And then I went with my coworker, Larry Spahn, who Spoonman 1091, and we created this brand new tool called NPS Payload. And every tool with ASCII art is awesome, right? So that's the only way you can do it. So if you guys want to check that out, it's actually out on TrustedSec's GitHub repository. We released this at Black Hat last year. We used it for a year with 0 detections. The moment that we released it, like, it started getting popped all the time. We do have a workaround for this that is evading every detection, but we're not releasing it yet. Sorry. So let me show you this. So let's say I ran responder. I got your credentials, right? Log into the box, whatever way. It could be just, here's the thing. I'm all for RDPing into a box. If I can RDP and you don't have any restrictions on there, I'm RDPing into a box. You'll hear a lot of people say, don't RDP into a box, you'll get caught. You're not going to get caught. Like, I log into RDP all the time. If I can RDP in and there's no other authentication mechanism, no cert signing, I'm logging into that box. I don't care. I have yet to have someone detect me. The only time that someone detected me was when I was DA on a box and I was logged in and I could see them log in, and then they tried to deactivate my account and then they would log off and I would just re-enable it. And so it was this cat and mouse game for a little bit. Like, I was disabling the account, re-enabling the account, disabling the account. I thought I was having fun. The guy was probably pissed, but like, it was going back and forth, and then all of a sudden I just kicked him off the server. So, you know, I have no problems RDPing into a box. So then what you do is you can is you can use this nice little tool I have here. NPS payload. And what this does is it actually generates a payload for you with using that MS build exploit, or technique, I should say. So I'm going to choose one. Number 2 is our brand new one. It's a C# one. It does it in memory. I'm not releasing it. And unfortunately, I'm not going to demo it here right now just because we want to keep it somewhat internal. But we do have a direct C# one, so that doesn't touch disk. Just to let you know, make you happy. And then we're going to choose our reverse HTTPS. We'll choose our IP. And that's it. Now I've got some instructions down here on how you can actually launch this and get the payload over there. I'm going to show you a couple different ways. So the first is, you'll notice that we have this MS build XML file. So if we open this up, you can see it's just an XML file. There's my payload. And there's my not PowerShell. And that's pretty much all it is. It's pretty straightforward stuff. And it just so happens that because of the way that MS build is that anything in this code thing right here, it'll run. So thank you, MS build. So I can actually take all of this code if I want. I can paste it in here. I can put it in the temp directory. Not a virus. Really? No kids. Right? Oh, there's no temp directory. I could just put it in C, PSF, not a virus. What? Oh, I'll put it in tools. Here. All right. So what you can do then is do msbuild .exe and then point it to that file. But before I do that, I actually have to set up my listener. So I'm going to come back to my box over here. We also have this RC file, which is nice because you can do ms console -r msbuild rc. And it's going to load up Metasploit and then put all of the stuff from that thing in there, and it starts a handler. The other thing I like to do is load sounds. If you've never done load sounds on Metasploit, it's amazing, and you'll see why. So then I can come over here, I can do msbuild, point it to this text file. Even though it's an XML, I just named it text. msbuild doesn't care.
Excellent.
That's mutts, by the way. There we go. We got our session. And there we go. Have I exploited anything? No. No exploits so far. Okay? So the other thing is like, well, we prevent writing to the disk, and we're inspecting files. You're inspecting text files, are you? Oh, okay. You're inspecting log files? Oh, okay. Well, let's say that you are. Fine. Sounds good to me. I'm going to exit out of here. And I'm going to take my MS Build NPS XML, and I'm going to move it to my Samba share. So I've moved it over to this really not a virus.log file, and I'm going to start up my Samba service. And the great thing about MS Build oh, I didn't start at the hold on. Oh, there's my session. Let's try this again. Make sure my job's still running. So the great thing about this is that we can just use the UNC path.
We've got a shell.
And there you go. By the way, I turned that on for a CCDC one time, which is the college cyber defense competition, and it. Unfortunately, I launched it out to all the teams, and I was like, "You got the shell, you got the shell, excellent, 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 excellent. You got the shell." I'm like, "Stop! Look at that. Did I touch disk? No. Have I exploited anything? No. Do you see the difference here? When you build your defense around disclosures, you're missing this because I'm blending right in with normal traffic. You now have to begin to think on the defensive side, how am I actually going to be looking for stuff like this? Right? I just used SMB. I did exactly what everyone's doing every day. I just pulled in a file, and it's a log file. You're not scanning log files. I mean, if you are, great, but it's on my box, so you're not scanning it. And I've already got a shell. So there's my demo. Hey, look, here we go. Adventure time. See, it was happened. So let's look at the other side. How were they caught? So Karen Thomas, he operated the train a little bit too quickly around one of the curves. So they keep the sensors on that, right? And so then they basically are like, why was this train going too fast? So they investigated, found out that he actually just liked trains a lot. The door was open. He went in and started operating the train. Like, what's the big deal, man? People got to work on time. Who cares, right? He was only caught because he went too fast. I get caught when I get too fast on my networks. If I try and scan too quickly, if I try and pop a box too quickly, if I don't take my time and effort to do that, I'm going to get caught. What about Private Wakeman? Well, actually, she wasn't caught. She actually she's buried in as Lyons Wakeman. Her letters and the record of her military experience were discovered more than a century after her death in a relative's attic. She successfully got through all of the detections of the military to figure out whether she was a man or not. Now, I don't understand how that's possible, but she did it. I mean, it's a modern day Mulan, right? I mean, it's a modern day, thing. What about Solomon Farrell? He was discovered by his girlfriend's mother, but she didn't turn him in. So he was caught, but he didn't get turned in. Now, how many times on a in a situation at your corporation where a user will identify something out of the ordinary, but they don't turn it in? And we'll get to that in a sec. What about Frank? He was eventually arrested in Montpellier, France, when an Air Force attendant he had previously dated recognized him and informed the police. So if you're going to be a pen tester, don't date the people that you're breaking into. Just a little tip, pro tip, right? So how do you get me? What I've shown you so far. Now, there are ways to do, like you can do MS Build, you can look at the process inspection, you can use Sysmon to look at that. But what about responder? How do you detect responder activity? Anyone? I will just PCAP the entire thing and read it. I'm sorry? You can disable NBNS, LLMNR, absolutely. However, it breaks a ton of stuff. So if you get with a new upstart company, yes, they probably don't have anything legacy. If you're at a company that has any legacy software whatsoever, chances are you're going to break something, right? And it's a very difficult thing. Yeah. So that's true. So, but how are you going to catch me at 2 o'clock in the morning? Because I don't sleep. Right? How are you going to detect me? How are you going to, and here's the other thing, think about it. What happens if I'm a legitimate employee? You gave me creds. I didn't even have to get that, but let's say I want to get yours. So I'm already on the network. I'm already doing this. So how are you going to do this? So it's a good thing you asked, because I wrote a neat little tool called Invoke Honeycreds. Always run everything administrator, please. Makes my life easier. Tools. For module invoke honeycreds. So Invoke Honeycreds is a neat little tool that I wrote, and it's specifically written in PowerShell. I've got a Python version of it coming out here soon. But similar to a honeypot, what this does is it actually injects a set of fake credentials into the wire. The only way somebody's going to see these is if they're doing pCapture or responder. That's it. These credentials do not have to exist in your domain at all. But what you want to do is when you set this up, you want to make it look legit. If you set up a user ID is in, fake domain / we're going to get you, I'm going to know it's a fake account, right? That's like people setting up honeypots. When I hit a honeypot and it responds to all top 1,000 ports, okay, it's a honeypot. Yay, you did it. Right? And oftentimes people set up the honeypot and walk away. They don't check any logs. They don't do anything about it. If you're going to do it. Make me want to use these credentials. So what you would do is typically do like, RIT North America, right? Even though it may not be the RIT, that domain may not exist, it looks legit, right? RIT North America. I don't know if there's an RIT South America, but whatever, right? And then what about this one? Does that look legit? Absolutely. SCCM updater? Sure. Why not? And then put in a password, right? Let me make sure responder is not running. Okay. Oh, I have to turn my SMB. Hold on. Okay, so you can see that my NSA 0XA box there is trying to come up with SMB traffic, but don't worry about that. So if I press enter there, what this is going to do, if I'm actually going to kill responder, and it's injecting these fake credentials into the wire right now. That's all it's doing. So the moment that I put up responder, oh, look at that. It's looking for RITNA. There's that NBNS query. Oh, what do we see? Oh, and I have a previously captured hash there. So I do two things. One, I actually send the hash. It didn't display on the screen because I already had it. I forgot to clear the database. But I also send it clear text creds. If I give an attacker a hash or clear text creds, which is he going to use first? Clear text creds, right? Why am I going to try and crack a hash that I may or may not be able to when I've got your clear text creds? You know what's cool? Is that even though I haven't even used these credentials, you have an alert on this side saying that someone's actually running responder on your side. This should always be blank. Now I will say that this has to be done in every broadcast domain. So that's whatever that subnet is. Whatever that subnet is, you have to be in the same broadcast domain so that you can do NBNS queries, because those are limited to broadcast domain, right? So that's the only caveat to this. So you would have to run honeycreds in every broadcast domain that you've got. So the moment that you get a 200 here, you know that someone's running responder on your network. And you have an early warning indicator. This should never complete. RITNA does not exist. There's no reason for this to ever complete. Ever. Never. There's no false positives with this. So this is what's called creating a path of least resistance. We, as an attacker, I don't like to have to work hard unless you tell me that I'm not going to get past your defenses. Then I write new tools just to piss you off, right? That's the idea, right? I don't like to have to do extra effort. So if I see a Tomcat box with default creds, I'm going after your Tomcat box with default creds, because that's going to be an easy win for me. But if you set up a Tomcat box with default creds that's completely isolated, and all of a sudden someone logs into it and drops a malicious war file on there, you're going to have an early warning indicator that you've got a malicious actor on your network. The idea is to you can't detect me everywhere. You can't. We have dealt with every corporation on the Fortune whatevers, and I'll tell you, I have seen budgets from super small to, oh my goodness, I can't believe they don't own their own country budget. They can't ingest it all, and they don't have the money, time, or resources to be able to do it well. I don't care what company you're at, you can't do 100%. So the idea is to put your detections around a specific area and make a path for that attacker to go to it. This is one of them. Put this out there. You're going to get an early warning indicator that someone's on your network trying to do malicious activity. The other thing is that when you think about detections, you're focusing on the exploit. I want to go back to that. You're focusing on patching and vulnerability management, and that's great. But is anyone ready for May's Patch Tuesday right now? Are you guys prepared for May's Patch Tuesday? Do you have those vulnerabilities already? You know Microsoft already has those vulnerabilities in play, right? They're writing the fixes right now, which means there's vulnerabilities exist that you don't know about, that you can't patch. So if your defenses are built around the initial vector, you're always going to be playing catch-up. And will always be this whack-a-mole security where you go after, and the moment that something comes up, you're like, bam, 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 and you get upset because you can't detect it. You can't stop it. I've got something right now that no one has except for my company. Right? It's because I was on a gig and someone told me I couldn't do something, so I wrote a new tool. So you can thank that company. So what are some other signs that how you can detect me? Whenever I get a box, regardless of how I got in, regardless of the initial vector, I'm going to be doing several things no matter what. Looking for who I am? Looking at users? That's going to always be a 1. If you see a net user command and that's outside of your normal behavior, like why? No DA is going to be on the domain admin, the domain controller running net user of all 5,000 of your boxes. They're going to be using the MMC that's part of that. I'm not. Command /C, reg, MS build. It's going to be a big one. W script. And if you haven't, you need to have a basic understanding of PowerShell. Windows Server 2016 and Nano Server, do you know the only way that you can administrate those? PowerShell. There's no GUI. I want to show you one other thing that you'll want to keep into consideration. I know a lot of people are looking at specific command line usage. I'm going to show you something I actually haven't even released yet. How about that? You guys want that? You guys want to see something new that I haven't released yet? You guys want to see it? You want to see it? All right. You might cry. So there was this neat thing that I saw the other day where you can actually do something like this. Echo, who am I? CMD dash. Anyone seen this? You know what the dash is? Take in from standard input. So when I pipe that who am I command, it's actually going to take it in. And there's my who am I. And what's neat is that when you look at the 4688 event ID, which is new process created, the only thing you see is this. Here, I'll show you. So we look at our Windows logs, security. Oh, I hope I did. Did I turn it on this one? I may not have turned it on this one. Oh no, it's. I might not have turned it on this one. Bummer. Okay, well you have to trust me on that one. So it's 4688. The only thing you see is this cmd.exe. You can also do cool things like this. You can also do things like, so this is what I haven't shown everyone. So you will get 2 event IDs, and you can somewhat see in there. So here's what I do. You guys ever seen this? Oops. And then if I go like this, goodbye forensics. You know why? None of those commands showed up in the event viewer at all. And the other thing is that whatever I type after the CON does not go anywhere. Type con, it just takes in from the standard console. So I can type all of my commands in that type con, save it to a file of anything legit, run it, delete the file. You have no insight at all. I've not released that. So there you go. What do you guys think? Pretty cool? People are crying. I didn't mean to make it sad. So a couple of things, real quick. Asset identification is really important. Knowing what assets you have. If you're not ingesting your logs, you need to. If you don't know what event ID 4688 is, you need to. If you're going to have any chance of knowing what I'm doing. Look at user behavior evaluation analytics, UBEA. That's going to normal baseline activity versus not normal baseline activity. If all of a sudden Ben in accounting starts Using carrots and pipes to standard input, that's probably not a good thing. I doubt they're doing cybersecurity stuff in their spare time. Creating those paths of least resistance. You can't detect everything, so make me and bait me to go someplace where you have the most detections. Empower your users with education. Education, not training. Training and education are two different things. Training, I don't have any investment in you whatsoever if you take what I have to say. If you go to one of my trainings, I will train you. If you don't learn it, it doesn't make a difference to me. I still get paid. Education is different. I care enough to make sure that you fully understand because your success impacts me. And if you want your users to do that, you need to reevaluate how you're educating them. So I have a lot more here, but we're running out of time. Talking about flat networks, like I get it. Like if anyone ever comes to you and they're like, "Hey, you have a flat network," get over it. It's done. There's nothing you can do. That's like trying to add a basement to your house after it's been built while people are still living in it, and you can't cause disruption. Just stop, please. Just stop. All right. Set up your NACs. Do it properly. I actually had a NAC that the only bypass was pressing escape at the 802.11x prompt. I hit escape and it let me on. You need to test those things. Disable ports that you don't need. Not everything needs a dynamic address. You guys realize this, right? Not everything needs DHCP. There are certain situations where static is actually going to be better, and not having a DHCP server in a certain subnet is going to be great. Because if you don't have a DHCP server and I plug in, you're going to get an alert. It's going to be great. I encourage, ELK is a great system. If you're not using it, use it. There's actually a lot of people that are using Carbon Black and Splunk, and they're actually dumping everything to ELK. So I actually do trainings on ELK. I actually teach you how to write alerts and stuff like that. So if you're not doing it, make sure you guys are looking into that. And then I think that's about all the time I have here for so far. So thank you guys very much. I appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
We want to thank you for coming to BSides.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you so very much.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.